Well, we have Mr. Oakland Benta with us on the podcast today. Mr. Benta, thank you for having us.
Thank you for
Thank you for joining us. I'm sorry.
thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
So, Mr. Benta, first let's do a little bit of history. You and I met once in Washington, D.C.,
Yes.
because you came to be interviewed for the documentary that I'm doing, The Man Who Sold the Caribbean to China. And I'd like to know, if you don't mind first, why is it that you were interested to be part and interview for that documentary?
I would say to your listening viewers, my name is Oakland Benta, an ex-chief of police of the U.S. Virgin Islands, an ex-senator of the U.S. Virgin Islands, and a vice president of a private telecommunication corporation in the past. And over the years, in listening to what's been going on before the MSR group, Mr. Philippe and I met, I've been an advocate as far as movement throughout the Caribbean when it came to the Chinese diaspora and what they were doing unknown to the people of the Caribbean and utilizing a backdoor to come into the Caribbean by way of moving individuals who are bomb techs, technicians, scientists, chemists, agents like the CIA of the United States, as well as military personnel. And the real movement for that complete organization and what it really intended or intentions were was to really create an issue for the safety of the United States of America and the U.S. Virgin Islands.
So it's really your concern is the safety of the United States with the massive infiltration of China in the Caribbean.
That is correct. That is correct, along with the residents of the Caribbean islands who are not aware as far as what's going on.
Yeah.
And that influenced where a lot of people migrate to U.S. Virgin Islands as well from the Caribbean.
Yeah. Now, when we did the interview in Washington, D.C., and that's going to be part of the documentary, you mentioned that one of the problem and why that was possible was because of the corruption of Caribbean leaders. And do you think that we can expect through this documentary and investigation to see a reverse of that process?
Well, yes, to both, and the other side of it, and the corruption as far as individuals elect to represent them, who are pretty much the leaders of the Caribbean nations, unbeknown to the individuals of whom elected them. Some of the transparency that should have been in place that they don't bring forth as far as what they've been doing with the program, and only one vision was to enrich themselves and not pay attention to the safety of the people in the Caribbean.
Okay, so when you came to DC, you met as well the president of our company, Mr. Buloa, who's a former U.S. intelligence officer, and he explained to you the issues that we have with the government of Saint Kitts, right? And you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you offered and you called Denzel Douglas, which you knew, and you say, well, let's go and meet them. And you called Denzel. Can you tell us about that? I mean, what did Denzel tell you when he called you?
Sure, full transparency. Yes, with the invitation to Washington, D.C., prior to moving and coming to meet with you, for other phone calls were made to other individuals who are in the same pattern that you are in as far as the safety of the United States of America. And through that, I got the green light to proceed and meet with you in Washington, D.C., as well as engaging with Denzel Douglas of the Eastern Caribbean, who was a Prime Minister of Saint Kitts, and trying to now move towards educating the individuals within the Caribbean as far as what's going on. And through that, of course, which I represent with the president of the MSR group, and myself and some, of course, we traveled to Saint Kitts. All right.
Yeah.
My meetings was held separately with each party, because you want to make sure you maintain a neutrality.
Yeah.
And each party, when I met with them individually, as
so just to be clear, Denzel Douglas asked you to come to St. Kitts and discuss the matter in person.
Yes, we decided through communication to come and meet in person and have a discussion in person.
Yeah.
Yes, rather than on phone.
Now, if I recall correctly, my lawyer in St. Kitts, Damien Kelsick, and the president of MSR were actually waiting at our lawyer office, Mr. Kelsick, to actually come and meet the Prime Minister and the Attorney General. And you went to that meeting to kind of prep the meeting with Mr. Marisho, Geoffrey Marisho, who's a DJ and a friend and a supporter of the Prime Minister, right?
Yeah. Yes. One of the way we move is we don't ever have meetings with individuals without legal representation.
Yeah.
And of course, in listening to one side, which is the MSR side of it, and then now the meeting to be held to bring everybody together. Meeting was had with the Prime Minister of Saint Kitts and Nevis, with his Attorney General, Gaff Wilkins,
yeah,
and other person by the name of Geoffrey Marisha,
yeah,
and myself, 4 individuals in that room.
And Mr. Marisho is a U.S. citizen as well, like you.
Yes.
So while you were having that meeting, the legal representative of MSR, our lawyer, Damien Kelsick, and the president of MSR were actually waiting in our lawyer's office to actually know what time will be the meeting, right? Now, after we kind of expose certain things in my podcast, Prime Minister Drew came out in his press conference and said that you went and on behalf of MSR tried to extort him for $40 to $100 million. So now, I think, and we're gonna put on the screen the WhatsApp message that I sent you before you went, where we said specifically that no settlement that will be involving public treasury money would be acceptable to MSR, right? So now, why, in your opinion, right, you don't represent MSR? Have you made any such demand to the Prime Minister in your meeting in front of Mr. Marisho?
So that the people who are listening would know that the government of St. Kitts are not the only individuals that I've spoken to.
Yeah.
And I was very surprised and very dismayed when I heard when the Prime Minister of St. Kitts made a statement in a press conference and said that an individual who was in one of the photos in the podcast that went up before,
which is you,
came into his office and demanded from them that they would, in order for this to go away, that they must pay $40 to $100 million. And the content of the presentation was erroneous. In no way, form, or fashion did that conversation take place in a manner that the Prime Minister presented it. Yeah. But I enlightened the people for them so they know how it really went.
And I think it's important that for the audience to know that before you went to St. Kitts, right, you have discussed that matter with a very important U.S. congressman to make sure that you were clear to discuss such a matter, correct?
And that is correct. And that is correct.
So, yes, and I think it's important for the audience to know that not only you had written message from me to say that when our lawyer meets actually with the Prime Minister and the Attorney General, we will not be interested in any settlement involving public money. So what do you think caused such a panic in the government to come up and say that you went and tried to extort $40 to $100 million? What do you think is their thought process? And did they forget that there was another American citizen in the room that could be subject to an investigation from the feds if that matter would be go any further? What do you think was their thought process?
And so that we're clear for those that are listening, this conversation is pretty much surrounding what the government of St. Kitts and Nevis came public and mentioned. Besides, but I think more so that the Prime Minister and his Attorney General, where the number discussion actually was preempted by the Attorney General of St. Kitts and Nevis, Gaff Wilkins.
That's interesting.
Gaff Wilkins, while speaking to the Prime Minister and other matters, Gaff Wilkins in the meeting started on more than one occasion prompting and asking, based on what's been filed in the courts by MSR and within the U.S. Department of Justice, America-wise, what is the ask? My response to him
But
after asking, what is the ask? And I said to him, enumeration as far as what he was trying to explain, I said, based on what I have read, more so, this is what it may be in a litigation of any sort. What's the fix? What would be? It would be this.
yeah.
And with that, the prime minister himself began to invoke in his own mind what he wanted to input, forgetting about that the purpose of me being there was to bring the governor of Saint Kitts and Nevis together with the representative of MSR who was waiting somewhere else for a call for them.
At the lawyer office. But it's unbelievable that they would make such a claim when the government is not sued in the RICO case.
Correct.
So it's almost like, in a way, that they trick you to try to create a story.
Well, they tricked themselves because they
Yes.
didn't know what they were sitting with. And they didn't realize that the other person in the room as well, who was one of the individuals, as you know, who got
Mr.
you and I to
Marshall,
speak,
Mr. Marshall.
didn't realize that what was being said and then presented in public would come back to haunt them.
Yeah.
And not realizing my history, as you look at some of the AI videos they've done, they claimed myself as far as being a person who's been in bankruptcy and many other things. And if they were following and knew what they were saying, they would not have made that statement. But I want to say, though, Mr. Martinez, to the people of Saint Kitts and Nevis, those individuals who we went through, as you know, we walked the streets, we spoke to people. And the accolades for the movie cinema productions as far as the MSR group and what the people sensitized as far as what you did for the country was great, as well as the ministers of the government who, with other podcasts I've seen, I saw a great bond between the country and the movie production. But it behooves me for what was said in a podcast where it's so far reaching, totally out of character, out of content.
Yeah.
The other part of the discussion I wish that the prime minister had even got into in his podcast or his media presentation to say what else we discussed when it came to the protection of the people of St. Kitts based on what's going on with China, the protection of our nations and their citizens so that they maintain the population of, as far as being Kittitians, rather than under the CBI program, you have more people under the CBI program whose numeration is greater than the native-born Kittitians.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that wasn't mentioned.
Yeah. So I know you're coming back to Washington, D.C. Next week, and I'm going to put you in touch with the federal agent investigating this case, so you can...
The federal agent investigating the case on your side.
Yes. And like that, you can discuss that matter in further details. Were you disappointed when you saw the press conference of the Prime Minister that he would come up with such a story?
I really was, as there is, as it's been explained in a lot of missions, conversations are held in confidence and in trust.
Yeah.
And with this is one of those things where I have never seen a behavior like this before in sitting in many other meetings. And this one for sure really surprised me because I really love the what I've seen before with the podcast you guys have done, with work that has been done there, and saw the real unknowing being an issue of what China purpose really was to the program. And in it bringing to education, which was pretty much what my role was, educating.
Not to mention that, to cut you off, I'm sorry, but if you would have done such a thing, well, because obviously you don't work for MSR, you don't represent MSR, the Attorney General was right there.
And that's what I was going to go to, under federal laws, under a treaty with the United States of America. But when I heard that, I was thinking...
He could have, you know, if you would have made an extortion demand, he could have said, hold on,
it's an offense.
I'm calling the police right now.
But he didn't need to call the police. He's the Attorney General of the country. Yeah. And there's police officers throughout the entire vicinity of the Prime Minister's office. Yes. So that extortion is a crime, period.
Yeah, of course.
But for the application through what is being insinuated, and to date, so you know, I've reached out to the Attorney General's office for them to prepare the arrest documents, and I advise that I will make myself present for those charges as they have so deemed within what they allege. I am ready to face the music and let them bring what they have and say that this is what happened. But I'm very disappointed.
Very disappointed, yeah.
And we only have in this podcast, Mr. Felipe, so people know, because the Prime Minister of the country made an allegation towards what the meeting premises were, totally out of character and out of context.
And Mr. Mauritia was very kind. After that meeting, he did a podcast the week after where he thanked me to bring information to the people of Saint Kitts about what happened to their money in the CBI program. And I sent him a very nice note to thank him. And I know because he really likes the Prime Minister and he's a big supporter of Prime Minister Drew. Let's talk about another subject, if you don't mind. You had several meetings with Denzel Douglas and Mr. Bulloa and my lawyer in some of the meeting. And based on those meetings, Mr. Bulloa came back and I decided to remove Dr. Douglas from the RICO lawsuit.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes. So based on the report that Mr. Bulloa gave me. Now, let me ask you a question. Where do you think Dr. Douglas stands in his head? Because you've spent a lot of time with him in St. Kitts. Where does he see the country heading? What is his personal aspiration, ambition? What would you be the content of, without going into details?
I said this on both on all sides, even in premise of speaking. But I was saying with Mr. Douglas, he really wants to see the country diversified. Yeah. He really wants to see the country grow to becoming second to no other place within the hemisphere. From where they came from sugarcane to now the economic growth based on the tourism packages, the offshore accounts as far as banks and sports coming in, and as well as the media production through what you guys brought, bringing more awareness of the island of Saint Kitts and Nevis.
Yeah, because in those meetings, what he told the president of MSR and you is that he wanted MSR to come back and make more movies and reopen the hotel.
And that is
I'm sorry?
And that is a fact based on what he said, as well as far as your podcast as well with the sitting Prime Minister. He said the same thing with an interview you did with him and one of your actors, that they want to start some sort of movie studio in education that complement the MSR group in your movement towards industrializing the movie industry significant out of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Yeah. Mr. Benta, do you have anything else to add?
I would say to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and all of the diaspora of the Caribbean that the attention of the world today that you and us, allies alike, should be focused on. The rhetoric of some who are making millions under the auspices of saying that they care for you, rather than paying attention to the damage it's doing to you and your country, and where you fall within a labeling where you really don't belong because of some who are not smart enough or that they were not aware of the detriment or the danger they're placing these countries in when they join ranks without even realizing who these players are coming through the back door through a very significant program, which is good. The CPI program is fantastic. The United States have what you call the EB-5 program, same program. That it can be worked right and the company can grow that incentive and growth economically with the right investment, with the right people, the true people who are coming through your door to be who they are. And I would say to every Caribbean people within the diaspora, along with the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, that we're one global market going forward, looking out for each other, regardless from where we hail. We are one nation under one God. And I want to thank you, Mr. Felipe Martinez, for having me.
I have one more question before you go.
Yes, sir.
After my podcast, where I've asked why the Prime Minister doesn't go after the missing money of the CBI. 2 days ago, we had the great surprise to see that because of the contract that MSR has provided to the court, the government has actually sent to those 185 fraudulent applicants a strong letter to say that they have to pay the balance of what they or or they will revoke the passport. Now, I see that as a positive development, that what we have been advocating for 2.5 years is finally happened. So, are you encouraged by that this new development?
I am encouraged, but I also would add that not only that they make sure that the amount that was not paid is paid so that the people who should benefit from the dividends in their country, respectively, but also that a real background is done by individuals or entity, even using the Department of Homeland Security to
Yeah.
help them to conduct background investigations on the applicants to make
Yes.
sure that we're not going through the same process. Because they may come and pay, but we still have the same issue. The safety of the shores of the United States of America based on who is part of the CBI program as far as vetted with documents to traverse through the Caribbean
Yeah.
under the radar of citizenship.
Well, Mr. Benta, thank you very much. We'll see you next week. We're going to interview some US congressmen for the documentary. And I want to thank you for coming on today on the podcast and clarified what happened in Saint Kitts and your involvement in exposing the Chinese infiltration of the Caribbean.
Really appreciate you. Thank you.
Have a very nice day.
Likewise.